One last drink. You ready?
Yeah, let's get to it.
Okay. Wait. No. Okay, there it is. There it is. Okay. All right, we got it. We're recording. We're live. We're
Live?
rolling.
Live?
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. Viet, I want to say thank you very much for hanging out. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, man, thanks for having me. It's always fun in your stream, so it is probably going to be a great time here on the podcast.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I figured like this started off as just something I wanted to do by myself, but I figured, you know what? I have so many friends that also have a like interest, and like especially like with Souls games, DNF fighter, just fighting games, and just thing coming out. I was like, I could really just talk to somebody and just get more a different perspective because like I like talking, by myself, but if I could get somebody's different perspective, I think it's even better.
Yeah, because it's a lot better to include more people. You get different opinions, and it gives more conversation, right?
100%.
That way, yeah, that way, whenever you are trying to express some kind of idea or like you think you like something, somebody might not, and you keep talking.
Yeah.
I want to say like first thing I did want to ask was just like start off as an icebreaker,
Mm.
and see where it all goes. And the question I was going to ask you to start off is, what did you have for lunch today, my dude?
Lunch. It's weird because ever since I've gotten this new diet, I've been trying to eat just protein and a lot of meat stuff, meat, cheese, boiled eggs. So
Low
that's what
carbs.
my yeah, low carbs. What's my diet consists of mostly. So I eat that during work, and then when I get home, it just depends on what the missus cooks for dinner. Like today, it was what did we have? It was steak with a pork belly on the side, and then I
Ooh.
had some Greek yogurt, so stuff like that. And so I try to like watch my weight. I used to be very chubby when I was younger, and it sucked growing up fat, and then like you know realizing if I don't make a difference now in my mid 30s, it's going to be even harder to do something. So I decided, okay, start by little things, Rick. Just change your diet, and then little by little, just improve, improve, improve.
Yeah, I feel that. Back in, middle school, high school, I was also pretty chubby, still am,
Mm-hmm.
but I did learn to use that to my advantage. Played football back in the day,
Really?
and yeah, it was yeah, played lineman. It was defensive lineman specifically,
Mm.
and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But my at some point, everybody else started outgrowing me. It's like, all right, this is not for me. Being 5'7" was an advantage until right around middle school, and everybody else hit their summer growth spurt.
And they all grew. Yeah.
When you don't see your friends for a while, then all of a sudden you come back during the summer and they're 1 full foot taller than they used to be,
Yeah.
and it's like, well, I think that about cuts it for my football career.
Your football career, I like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, but yeah, that's definitely pretty cool that you are learning to watch your weight, learning and being very attentive to what you eat, and just making small changes. Sometimes it can be very hard
It
to do
is.
that, especially with your diet,
It's a
because you're.
it's
Yeah,
a
go ahead.
it's a discipline thing because because I know that I'm not gonna starve to death. We live in an age where food is just readily available. We could get it whenever we want, and just because you go a couple of hours without eating, you're not gonna die. You're gonna be fine.
Yeah, you're understanding and kind of testing your limits, right? You know that there is this food or this treat or something that's good that's available, but you don't need it.
Yeah,
Right? You can abstain from it, and you can, I don't know, treat yourself with it later. But you don't always need it. Just like for me, the hardest thing is soda.
yeah.
Being able to cut out that sugar can be very difficult, especially if you built it up as a part of your habit
Yeah,
from day to day.
what I've been doing is I traded them out for I started so I love Coke, and then I changed it for like the Coke minis. So I just
Yeah,
get like a smaller dose, and then after a while I was like, you know what? I tried the Coke Zeros. So and those are like zero sugar, and they're good. I like them, but sometimes I'll still drink like the Topo Chicos just if I want something fizzy. Of course, the flavor is something that if you're not gonna get any sweetness because it's just carbonated water. So
Yeah.
I'll use that as a substitute. And then every once in a while, like, screw it, I'll get a Dr Pepper or something. But yeah, soda is one of those things where it was kind of hard to change because growing up as a kid, it was, again, it was just readily available. It was always the 2 liter in the fridge.
Yeah. And that type of like portion control
Portion control.
is just understanding yourself, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I wanted to segue with this, is talking about how you understand things that are going wrong with your body and then you adjust for it, right? And as we both know, one of our favorite things to do, play, watch, is fighting games.
Yeah.
And kind of like draws up. I wanted to draw that parallel here, where it's about self-awareness and we understand sometimes there are things we need to fix, there are bad habits we need to change in order to get better.
Yep.
But with the soda conversation, sometimes you do just want to wake up EXDP, and it's okay.
Yeah. You're right. You're right.
It's okay.
You're right. You're right. So I would think I've already asked you this before, but I just want to, let everybody else know. What's your like video game origins? What got you into video games? What were some of your favorites? What were some of your earliest memories, and what keeps you to video games now?
Yeah, the earliest memory was being at the local laundromat that my mom worked at with a family friend and playing at those cabinets. It was towards the end of arcade culture in the late 90s.
Okay.
And the very first game that I very vividly remember mashing buttons on was X-Men versus Street Fighter.
Oh yeah.
Being able to see that, seeing that handshake between Ryu and Cyclops, that did it for me.
That's iconic. That was so cool because that was back in the day when like it was like the X-Men animated series, and then just Street Fighter was everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. The X-Men animated series Saturday morning cartoon was very vivid, very loud with their music and their colors. So I think everybody in the 90s that grew up watching Saturday morning cartoons can recall some kind of memory for that. And being able to see these X-Men characters that I recognize every weekend meshing with a very well-known game from the early 90s was all that I needed to see to say, all right, I want to play this game. How do I do that?
Exactly. Yeah, just seeing like a crossover over to, well, for me for sure, one of my two favorite franchises as a kid. I was like, what is this? This is so cool. And I didn't play X-Men versus Street Fighter, but I did play Marvel versus Capcom on the PlayStation 1, and man, I was like, they could do this, because I've always been used to just 1v1 fighting, mostly grounded, and a couple of jumps here and there, and just basic fireballs, and on a very static stage. But then when I see like Marvel versus Capcom, I'm like, you're how are you jumping this high, and who's coming in? This is assist, and like I didn't realize at the time, like this is going to be another genre of fighting games, that I was just like, I was just so blown away.
Yeah, versus fighters are very wild, especially for a younger audience, because there's so much going on, but it catches your attention.
Yeah.
There's too much going on to where in your head you're thinking this is the best thing ever. It's information and sensory overload. That's mainly what drew me into it. Although I will say at the start, as with any other fighting game, keep in mind I was 8 years old at the time. With any fighting game, there's always some kind of difficulty.
Oh yeah, definitely.
However, I did have a cousin that was helping me out, helping me to learn the game, and I think my earliest memory from that was when he was trying to teach me the game, and the way he was going about it was trying to teach me how to play neutral. But when you're trying to teach that to an 8-year-old, they don't care. They just want to do the cool stuff. They just want to do everything that looks flashy, right?
The flashiness, the DPs, yeah.
Yeah. He kept telling me, it's like, no, don't look at my hands and how I'm performing the moves. Look at the screen and see what's going on.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, okay, sure. But me being 8 and he being in his teens,
yeah,
my head is basically right at the joystick. So even though he told me to look at the screen, I was just looking at his hands trying to see how he was doing the motions.
Yeah.
what is this motion that gets him to that shoots this fireball? What's this motion that gets Gambit to throw all these cards? How did he perform these big flashy supers with the bars and all
Yeah,
of that?
I remember playing the Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo on the controller, and that took me forever. And I think it was by accident, but I finally learned how to do a DP. I was like, wait, that's how you do it? That's what that motion means? And I was so happy because I was like, I finally did it. I could do a DP.
That it's funny that you mentioned that because in my head when I first learned how to do a DP, because it's in a versus fighting game, right? The motion for supers is usually a quarter circle and then multiple buttons.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was learning how to do a DP, instead of doing that Z motion, I would just do 2 quarter circles and then hit a button because the input buffer would catch everything if I did it fast enough,
Really?
right? So in my head, I was like, all right, 1 quarter circle plus a punch, fireball. 2 quarter circles plus a punch, DP. That's how it was. Imagine that rude awakening whenever I start playing actual 2D fighters, like Street Fighter 3, Street Fighter 4, and I try to do a DP, all of a sudden the super comes out, and I don't know what's going on.
For real, dude. Yeah. Yeah. It just so okay, so fighting games was some of your favorite stuff in the Washatera. What else? Like
Yep.
what did you play a lot? Did you play anything a lot on the consoles at the house?
On the consoles, the first thing that I was introduced to was also a fighting game, honestly. My brother had a Sega Genesis and he had Super Turbo.
Really?
So when I was interested, when I was interested in X-Men versus Street Fighter and I come home, he's like, "Hey, I have this," and he pulls out a console, and I'm like, "Oh, I can play this at home now. Why am I ever leaving home?"
Oh yeah,
Right?
you don't have to use your quarters.
Yep. But again, but like at the same time, as I was growing older, I did, recognize that, hey, there are more games than just fighting games. And this happened whenever I came over to my cousin's house one day.
Uh-huh.
And I see that he has this brand new game case right next to his PlayStation 1.
Uh-huh.
And I'm wondering, it's like, hey, what is this? My cousin at the time didn't want me playing that game.
Uh-huh.
And they said, no, you have to play this when you're older. Don't worry about it. You won't be able to play it. Because on this case, it's bright white. And there's this man that is facing away from me.
Mm-hmm.
And he has a very big sword on his back. Can you guess what the game is?
We said it was a white.
It was a white background. And there's a man front and center looking up and to the left. And he has a very big sword on his back.
I want to say Killer Instinct, but I could be wrong. What is it?
Final Fantasy VII.
Oh, fine. Oh, that one. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was my first introduction to other games because when, especially when you were younger, when somebody told you that you couldn't do something, you just wanted to do it more,
For sure.
right? And he was worried that I would either overwrite his current save if I was playing, because back then we had memory cards,
Of course.
and it was very easily to just overwrite anything.
Yeah.
And the disc was brand new, so you didn't want to scratch the disc, so you don't want little kids scratching your disc.
And it was-
therefore, you tell them don't touch it.
And I remember the conversation at middle school when that game came out. It was like, it's 3 discs long. We're like, what? What do you mean 3 discs? Yeah, dude, it's 3 discs long. And then we'll be like, what happens if you put the second disc in before? Like, well, the game just won't read it. Like, what? We're all like, had our minds blown that a game could be that much. And it was funny because back when we were younger in middle school, we always wanted like video games to be, oh man, if they're not, like at least 40 to 60 hours, it's not worth it. And now as an adult, it's like, hey, can we just keep this at 10 and then, wrap it up?
Oh man, yeah. We had all the time in the world, and 46 hours is like, no, we still want more. We want 100. We want to be able to stay up late at night over the weekend and still not finish it for the rest of the month and still keep going.
And I really think it depends on what kind of game it is, because I recently just finished the last boss at on Elden Ring, and I looked at my playtime. It was like 107, almost 110 hours, and it didn't feel like that. That game somehow made it work where each hour was fun. I mean, don't get me wrong. There were some times where I was frustrated because I was trying to learn bosses, and I'm still doing that right now with Melania. But for the most part, on that game, even though it was that many hours enjoyed, it never felt like a chore because I just always wanted to know what's in the next dungeon, the next area, what's around this corner, what's this item do, how can I explore it, who do I talk to? It just something about Elden Ring. It just did wonders for me that made me appreciate these long games, and I really got immersed in it.
Yeah, I think that comes from the want to be able to finish something, right? You've been shown that it is possible, and you're always getting slightly closer, as is the 4 to 5 hour sessions when you're trying to beat a boss.
Don't
But
say
at the
about it.
same time, you can take a break and do whatever you want. That open world aspect of it, I think, really fills the time very well, and
Yeah.
that's why Elden Ring is a very successful game. Probably game of the year, honestly.
Yeah, I agree. And I find it so interesting that it had so much crossover with just different communities because a lot of people from the FGC were just crossing over and playing that game, also putting on their streams, and people from like the Monster Hunter community were playing that game, Of course, the From Software community was backing it up, but I just, that game just had so many eyeballs on it from different communities. It was amazing.
Yeah, and I think that's probably, let me rephrase this. I think that game is a welcome break from anything that you might consider like work, or something that might be considered tedious, or something that you have to do. Elden Ring giving you the opportunity to explore, but also punishing you for exploring the incorrect way or doing the wrong thing,
Yeah.
kind of plays into our mentality when we were younger. Uh, what I mean by this is, say you have a kid that is doing something that looks very precarious, very dangerous, right? There's, if you were a parent, there's the part that says, "Man, I should tell my kid to stop this. They're going to hurt themselves. I know that it's going to happen." They like immediately determine that the child will hurt themselves. Then there's the other end where the parent will allow them to make this mistake if it happens, or see if their child can approach this problem logically. And if they don't, the parent is there to keep them safe.
Yeah.
They are being watchful, right? And Elden Ring does that within a space that will, you know, there's no actual harm to you, it's just harm to your virtual character. However, you are still learning to approach a problem at a more steady rate, or with a more methodical
Oh
approach.
yeah. That game will learn you
Um,
real good.
oh yeah, for sure. And if you didn't, you quit within the first hour. Like, you got to the tree sentinel, and you stayed at the tree sentinel for 3 hours without understanding that you can move on to the next part of the game,
Yeah. Yeah, I learned that the
and you
hard
quit
way.
there.
Yeah, I learned that hard way. I saw him. I was like, I'm gonna fight him, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna come back later. I think that's just Miyazaki saying, hey, don't fight everything right away. Go explore. Come back to this later.
Yeah, like, you can always explore different avenues, and if you aren't allowed to do that, that's again that aspect I was talking about earlier, where you were told to do something, you told you couldn't do something, and you just want to do it more.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
want I want to go back to Final Fantasy VII. So I remember you said as a kid you saw it, the big sword with the white cover. Did you get a chance to play it when you were younger, or when did you finally get to experience Final Fantasy VII, the OG?
I finally played Final Fantasy VII for the first time quite a few years after that, when
Okay.
I reached middle school,
Okay.
because I didn't own a PS1 at that point, and grew up in a relatively poor household. So had to save up money
Of course.
to buy what I want. And
Yeah.
until then, I just had all the cabinets in the washateria to hold me over. So fast forward, I think it's think I'm 13, 7th grade. Finally get my first PS1. It was, the PSX, the very small, thin version of the
Uh-huh.
PlayStation. It's not blocky and sharp corners, but it's rounded and it's very small.
Yeah.
Finally was able to get my hands on that. My first 3 games for that system. Lo and behold, 2 of them were fighting games,
Okay.
but they weren't the fighting games that we've mentioned so far today. The first one was Tekken 3.
Okay.
That was my intro to that series.
Yeah, that's uh one of the greater ones of Tekken, right? Or Tekken 2. I forget.
Yeah, it's Tekken 3 and Tekken 2.
Okay.
Tekken 3 was one of the greatest hits on the PS1, and it was more recognizable nowadays to the greater audience because, Jin gets introduced, Hwoarang gets introduced. There are a lot of newer characters, younger characters too.
Is that when Eddie Gordo gets
That
introduced?
I believe so. Yeah, I think Eddie was also introduced in Tekken 3.
Because when I was younger, breakdancing was very popular, and then when all the kids saw there's Eddie Gordo, he breakdances, like oh my, like all the kids just like playing Tekken and start playing Eddie Gordo because just breakdancing was the shit back then. So that's a character they could relate to.
Yeah, not only that, in in the process of learning the game, if you just mashed buttons with Eddie, he would eventually start doing a flare. He would do what we now know as capoeira,
Yeah.
but he would start doing flares as long as you hit some combination of X or O, the kick buttons, and he would just do it. And you always thought that's super cool.
Of course.
And it was very easy to very easy to do that. You didn't have to think about pushing in a direction or doing a command input or any of that. You just sat down, pressed buttons, and all the characters were doing cool stuff.
Yeah, yeah. I started doing the whole high-low stuff and doing combos, and like, I was Street Fighter was my first fighting game. So when I saw, and then it was Mortal Kombat and Tekken, but I never got into those. I always saw them, and then like, I guess Mortal Kombat after a while, I was just like, oh, like I think it was after like Mortal Kombat 3 Ultimate, I started realizing, oh, they're just trying really hard with like over the top stuff, and I kind of like suspended my sense of disbelief. Like I tried to suspend my sense of disbelief, but I was just like, this guy just had his knee turned inside out, and he's still standing. I'm like, okay, that's a little bit too much for me. I'm fine.
Yeah, that was I think that was around the era of the second generation of games, right? PS2, Xbox, and the other Mortal Kombat's coming around that era, which is what Deception, a lot of the
Yeah, because I remember.
more 3D.
Yeah,
graphics
because I remember. I think it was Mortal Kombat 4 on the Nintendo 64, which where they started like doing this whole 3D kind of stuff, and I remember playing it, but I was just like, they just turned his leg into a pretzel, and he's just standing. I'm like, okay, that doesn't make sense. I mean, of course, freaking Blanca's rolling, head over heels towards you, and then there's a sumo dropping down on top of you, and there's a military guy throwing sonic booms. That's not real either, but it's a little bit more believable than spinning someone's head inside out, and then them getting right back up and ready to fight you again.
Yeah, and I think that's a consequence of Mortal Kombat's take on fighting games when they were trying to become more realistic, trying to be more relatable. They had the real captures of
Yeah.
people performing the moves and doing the motion captures, right?
Yeah.
So you came to expect some kind of realism from this fighting game. So it was very relatable until you saw the part that somebody got both of their kneecaps blown out, rearranged, and they're still standing.
Yeah, yeah.
It kind of disassociates you from it, pulls you back, ruins your immersion, as the kids call it.
Yes,
nowadays.
that's the best way to say it. It ruins my immersion. You're right. Thank you, Viet. Yeah. This is another thing what I want to do with the podcast. Just help work on my lexicon.
Fair. Yeah, working with words and vocabulary day in and day out has helped me with that.
Yeah, dude.
But that's work talk.
Yeah,
you
because
know.
me personally, all I do, I just lean boxes all day, so I got no one to talk to. So I'm just kind of like brainstorming all day, not till I get here, and then I'm like, okay.
Yeah, having to make everything sound professional definitely improves your category vocabulary. What is that categories? Vocabulary.
Yeah.
especially when you are behind a screen and you have some time to think of a response.
Yeah.
Then yeah, that is
Yeah, because and I'm kicking myself and I'm kicking myself because when you said, all right, the box cover had white background with a dude with a big old sword, I'm like, duh, Rick, that's freaking Final Fantasy. But I was thinking like I was thinking of some sort of like it has to be related to a fighting game. But like, Jesus Christ, Rick, you know this,
you just asked me about
yeah,
games that aren't fighting
yeah.
games.
I was like, I know this artwork. Yeah, I was like, oh Jesus Christ, Rick. Never cease to amaze.
Yep.
So,
Pushing the conversation along, though, the second game that I bought, the other fighting game, was a little game by Hudson Software called Bloody Roar 2.
I never played that one.
It is a very interesting game where you have the ability to transform into some anthropomorphic version of an animal.
Yeah.
Everybody has this ability to transform and their moves get buffed. It's very much like an install, right?
Okay.
As we know it today. And back in the day, that was little story about that one when I was actually when I was going to go buy the game. You know, I'm 13 and I'm walking up to the register with this console and these three games in my hand.
Yeah.
Keep in mind, my dad was with me at the time, and he, at this point, does not speak a lick of English. So anything that the teller is asking, I have to translate.
Yeah.
And this is the first time that I'm officially buying a game, and Bloody Roar 2 is rated M for mature. Because there's a lot of blood, and there's a lot of like mutilation. Kind of mutilation. You're stabbing people with claws.
Yeah, blood and gore and stuff like that. Yeah.
A lot of blood and gore. And we get up to the counter, and the teller looks at me, looks at my dad, and he motions to my dad. He's like, "Hey, are you okay with your son buying this?" He looks at me, asks me in Vietnamese, "What did he say?"
Uh-huh.
And in my head, I'm like, man, how do I spin this to where I can buy it? Like, do I A, lie, B,
Tell the truth.
tell the truth and see what he says?
I like how B tell the truth was their second option.
Yeah, of course, because I'm a teenager. I want this, and I'm doing it. I'm buying it with my own money, right? And I'll be damned if I'm gonna let an age gate stop me from doing this.
Right.
And then I went with option C, which is describing what the game is about.
There you go.
Vietnamese.
There you go.
Right. And letting him say, "Oh, okay," or "No, this is bad."
Yeah.
Option C was the best because my dad is a very, very big fanatic of action and gore and martial arts. Perfect. So explaining to it, he kind of got the gist. It's like, oh, yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, it's like, all right, cool. Didn't lie to him. Told him the truth about what the game was about. And let him, come to his own conclusion instead of trying to say that this is for 17. It's like, make that. I'll spin it in a way to where he will make the decision.
Yeah,
put it kind of in his court. That was like a very fond memory that I had.
That's awesome.
Yeah, Bloody Roar 2. That's where I learned that there are more to fighting games than just throwing fireballs and DPs and Totsis. Because there was a character in that game named Long, and he had an evil counterpart called Shenlong. But to play this character effectively, he had a cycle that you had to move through. It was a flow chart in order to continue his combos.
Really?
And the coolest thing about this character was like a series of machine gun blows that he does at the wall. And to get to it, you have to do the cycle correctly. And in my head, I'm like, this is the biggest brain character in the world. How do I do this? And that's where I learned how to recognize there are combos to these games.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a very interesting experience. Took a long time, especially because I was playing on pad. and I didn't know that it didn't click in my head that there were fight sticks for consoles at this point.
I always saw them like, of course they were attached to the arcade for sure. And then, but like every here and there, I'd see, glimpses or like when I go to like, when I used to play Magic the Gathering when I was younger, like one of my buddies, he would have, and you probably seen it one. It's like the boxy one that has like the kind of like the white top and just like the old school layout. I forget what's the name of that stick, but you'd see them here and there. And I was like, you could buy a stick? He's like, yeah. And you just attach it to your console and then you could play. I was like, what? And then I remember when it was I think it was the 15-year anniversary of Street Fighter, and Capcom released, it was Third Strike, and it was like, I think Street Fighter 2 Turbo. I think they like combined them together, and you could, just you could play it. And if you bought the bundle, like a special promo, it comes with like the Street Fighter themed sticks, and I was like, oh, these were like my first, arcade stick that I was able to bring home and play. And ever since then, like I just told myself, every time I play a fighting game, especially Street Fighter, I gotta play on stick. And I just had this mentality of just being like sticks only. And then if somebody like wanted to play and didn't have their own stick, I'm like, dude, you don't have your stick, like you're not legit. But that was just something that was ingrained in my mind, that it had to be, if you play fighting games, you had to play on stick. It wasn't until recently when I started watching a lot of stuff on Twitch and just like getting more into the whole FGC part and watching streams of events and everything, and I'm like, people are playing on pad and they're actually like really really good and being successful. It's just like, it's just whatever you practice, and it's not about having a mentality of saying, well, if you want to play this game, you have to play it like this only. There's just so many mediums that you controls that you could use, to for that fit your play style, or just to enjoy the game,
Yeah, and I think that's part of a changing of the industry, because nowadays the people that are making these games played these older versions, these older games when they were younger, and accessibility was most likely an issue, where they would say, I wish I had a stick. Oh well, I'm going to play on pad, but it seems very difficult on pad. When I grow up, I'm going to make a game that makes it to where you can play on everything on a more level playing field.
Yeah.
Nowadays, nowadays everybody that is making these fighting games, grew up in that culture, and they want the next generation to be able to play, have it accessible, don't have to spend $200 on a stick to play a game, right?
And you know what I've noticed too, even like within the FGC, there's having sticks is kind of like a subculture, because you can customize them and get parts and different features and just different, little things just to personalize it and make it your own, whether it's LED lights, springs, different custom box, homebrew stuff, just like, that's something that I do like. And I don't know if you guys ever see, well, I have it blurred right now, but I have a collection of sticks that I don't always use them, but sometimes I just like appreciate the art of them,
Yeah, freedom of expression. You have this tool that you're using to play the game, and you want to look cool. You want it to look cool. You want to be able to impress everybody that's around you. And yeah, fight sticks are a great way of doing that because of the customizability, depending on what you get, of course. Like you could have a Razor Panthera or even a Hori Rap 4, some of the older stuff. But yeah, a lot of the newer sticks too also have customizable options whenever you're building them. If you decide to build your own, or you can get it like a Victrix stick, where they have the ability to I guess it's called laser engrave. Yeah, like to laser engrave some kind of design that you want.
I remember when I was younger, and my parents bought me and my brother a Nintendo 64. So we had like the original gray controller that came with the 64, and then like to get the second controller, they were kind of pricey. So we kind of look at these these alternative, that were still in the Nintendo 64 controllers, but that were kind of subpar on the quality, and they were Mad Cats. And I remember just being like, Mad Cats, this sucks. And then it wasn't until like around, because I'm a filthy 09er, when I started getting into the FGC. So, that's when Kevin, my buddy Chameleon, told me about, Street Fighter 4. He's like, have you heard about Evo? I'm like, what? Yeah, they're using these sticks from Mad Cats. I'm like, Mad Cats? That's a shitty ass brand. Like, no, dude, this dude named Mark Julio started working with them and talking to the FGC and started, just building to specs and something that the community needed and like a lot better quality. I'm like, what? He's like, yeah. So look at these TE. I think they're the TES or TE2.
Yeah, it was TES and TE2.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
shout out to Mark, man.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I saw it. And I'm like, and I picked up one and I tried them out and I picked one up for myself and they're like super customizable too because you could change the buttons and everything. And ever since then, I just kind of fell in love with just collecting sticks. And then even my wife, she's real crafty. She made me a pair. So ever since then, I was like, okay, maybe Mad Catz isn't complete shit. And then like like a couple years later, there was like a Rock Band revival move, and they put other chips on that, and it flopped, and then they went under. I'm
Oh
like,
yeah.
oh, poor Mad Catz.
They tried to get in on the Rock Band Guitar Hero
Yeah,
movement in the mid 2000s,
yeah,
and they got in a little too late.
yeah, yeah.
Guitar Hero and Activision started making cheaper products, and it
Yeah, I think by
didn't
then,
go
like
well.
everybody was just, I think the gaming community was just oversaturated with rock band stuff because they had like Rock Band, Green Day, Beatles, Metallica, like everything. I think people were just like, okay, enough.
Yeah, it's like the Assassin's Creed nowadays,
Oh
right?
god,
Just
I never got into those
one every
games.
year.
I never got into those games, and even Call of Duty. Like I'd play one every couple of years, but then I'd be like, this was just like the last one I played 4 years ago, but just like a different map or something. I was like, okay, I'm done.
Yeah, there was a lot of reproduction because everybody just wanted the next big thing. The novelty of a game was very big, and
But
especially after the mid to late 2000s, there were so many innovative games coming out for the third generation, right? PS3 360, that caught everybody's attention. And anytime something new came out, it's like, oh man, it's bright, it's shiny, we have to have it, even though we just have had this new one this first year.
yeah,
Kind of like the advent for NBA, like the 2Ks, NBA Lives,
the
Maddens, all of
NFLs,
that.
yeah, yeah.
Yep, yep, yep.
I was just like,
Yeah.
but then again, I never played sports games, and there's some people who love. I mean, of course, I mean, because I like to follow the NPD, the National Purchase Diaries, and they talk about best-selling games of the month and the year, and it's not a surprise when I see NFL 2K something or Madden 2K something up there on the list. I'm like, well, I mean, obviously some people love it. It's not for me, and that's something I kind of learned. It's just that just because you don't buy it, Rick, doesn't mean there's not other people that are enjoying it. It's like that's true. There's
Yep.
a whole generation of younger gamers coming up. That love different things, and that's fine.
Hey, gamers. Yeah, pretty much. Everybody has their own niche, and whenever something comes out, if you gotta have it, you gotta have it. Especially if you have some kind of connection to it. With the sports games, if you avidly watch those sports too, there might be this up and coming player that you have to have the latest edition of because the older game won't get an update and the player ratings won't update, so you don't get the buffs that your character would have essentially gotten from year to
Yeah,
year.
I always thought about that. I figured like, why doesn't like EA or the companies that own these video game franchises want it instead of like, and I guess it makes sense if you think about it. It's like instead of burning out their audience and selling copies at full price every year, just do like a DLC that upgrades the roster. But then again, if we could sell a full price game, why are we gonna sell half price DLC? So yeah.
I think it also has to do with the people outside of the game developers that help on this game too. I don't know if you knew this, but games have ratings adjusters, basically scouts that go to actual games and apply a value to a player's skill.
Really?
Yeah. That's why there's some jokes about NFL players or rookies and what their rating is on the game because of a group collectively known as for Madden, I guess, is the Madden ratings adjusters.
Uh
They
huh.
apply values to their skills, whether it's like their speed, their strength, even paying attention to their weight, how explosive they are. All of these stats get assigned a value, and they collectively make the player's rating.
Wow.
And yeah, it is a very extensive process that I only know about because I did play. I think the first Madden game that I ever played was Madden '04. It was
Uh
Michael
huh.
Vick on the cover on the PS2. way back in the day.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, I always wondered how these values got assigned. Turns out there's a team that does it, that
Wow.
takes a look at games and adjusts them accordingly. So that's why when you see a player in their rookie season, they might be like a 70 or an 80 around there. If they have a very good season going into the next Madden game, they'll be up in the 90s.
Wow, I did not know that. That's interesting. I
Yeah, there's a
figured.
lot of data that goes into
Yeah,
it.
I figured they just kind of like just tweak some numbers around and just look at stats from last year and be like, okay, this is just projected, and then they just kind of just go to the, you know, I don't even know how the game works when it comes to like adjusting parameters for like now this character has a better chance of catching the ball or something.
Yep. Yeah, there
Interesting.
are adjusters that tweak those values, but then there are also some random things that they might not have the staff for, or even the permissions for, because because it's the NFL. Sometimes a lot of that data can be private, and they have to make things up in order to fill in the rest of the slots of the game. And I remember talking to one of my friends who works on some of the EA games, and he was saying that there were some coaching positions for like a build a team mode
Uh
that
huh.
needed to be filled, and they couldn't get the profile picture for certain coaches.
Really?
Yeah, and so he told me that they used some of the employees' profile photos for these coaches. He's like, yeah, if you look at me if you look for this coach's name in, say, the Dallas Cowboys, you'll see a picture of me in there instead of the actual coach's name, instead of the actual coach, because we couldn't get their likeness. We didn't get permission to do it, or it was
That's
very so obscure we had to fill it in.
that's funny. I didn't know that.
Yep. A
Wow.
lot of stuff that goes into some of these games, and maybe that price tag is deserved. Who knows?
Probably. Yeah, I'm guessing. I'm guessing for the fans, it's something from them. But for sure, me, I'm just. I'm sure the ones who get the Maddens every year, they look at me and be like, "Wait, you buy every fighting game?" You know. So it's
Exactly.
yeah.
Like we bought DNF Duel day one without any other reviews. I don't know if you played any of the betas to test it out.
I'd never played any of the betas, but I'm weird that if there's a game that I'm kind of excited for, especially if it's a fighting game, I kind of just don't touch the betas because I always tell myself, Rick, you never know what's gonna change, and if you like it, you're gonna. I mean, if you're gonna buy it, you're gonna buy it. So, and the thing is, I base a lot of my reviews and wanting to buy it depending on like my peers. So like I'll see what you're talking about it. I'll see what Johnny's talking about it. I'll see what Dirk's talking about it. I'll see what the local scenes talking about it, and then I kind of just gather my thoughts from there. Based upon the things that I've learned along the way and what I've heard, and just kind of like glue it all together. And for the most part, I haven't bought any flop fighting games. I've been enjoying all of them that I pick up. I don't always stay with them, but I like, just getting the reviews from my peers and then going off of that.
Yeah, yeah, I get that. I For me, I enjoy the learning process of fighting games.
Oh yeah.
Being like once you have the basics down and the button controls, I want to see what this game has to teach me and what I can learn from it, right? For
Yeah.
example,
Uh,
I think I put 2 hours into the lab earlier
did ya?
for DNF. Yeah.
Who you playing as?
And yeah, the timing was the issue for me. It's
Was
like
it?
understanding how to visually confirm it and then making my hands do it. It's very much an anime game, right?
Who you practicing as?
Striker.
Okay.
Currently playing Striker.
Okay. How's she
Yep.
feel? Cause she's on my maybe list. I kind of want to try her out. I mean, I want to try everybody out, but I think Striker is kind of like my style.
Striker is almost like a one-hit wonder
Yeah.
where if you can find the window and you have the MP to do it, she will mess you up, especially in the corner. A lot of her pickups and OTGs just keep on going. It's almost like she has a very long series of Rekkas.
Really?
And and it's very true to form. It's not difficult to execute. The
Mm-hmm.
only thing is the timing.
And that's what I noticed too. It's because if you do the technical input on the move, you recover your MP faster, right? Instead of doing the
Hmm.
shortcut.
Yep.
So I guess that has to be, that has some way in on how you do your combos, because you probably want to do the technical stuff to help you get your resources back in time for your next set of attacks and combos, right?
Yeah, and I forget what it's called in this game, but they have the same mechanic from Tatsunoko versus Capcom called Baroque, where you expend your gray health for MP.
Oh yeah, that conversion, I think.
Yeah, conversion. There
Yeah.
you go. Yeah, yeah. When you convert that gray health into more resources, and it acts very similarly to a Roman cancel in Guilty Gear, where
Really?
it cancels. Yeah, and in this case, it will give you more meter. So when you are trying to make a comeback, especially out of a block string, you've accumulated this gray health. You have this MP. When you exhaust your resources, you can use that gray health to get more and keep going. And that's what makes this game so interesting to me, is being able to figure out all of those numbers and keeping that combo going as long as possible, which is why this game is probably going to be thrown into the category of kusoge, right?
Which I'm fine for. Not every game has to be perfectly balanced
Oh,
and even. And I was talking to my buddy House. He's like, dude, I want this game to be madness. I'm like, you know what?
yeah,
Yeah. We don't need every game to be straight
100%.
laced. Yeah.
Yeah, and even like madness, either at a from a technical standpoint or even a visual standpoint.
Yeah.
I was in my friend's Discord, and we had just finished a session of Guilty Gear Strive, and I just put on DNF Duel, play it for the first time, and I'm going through all the characters, and so many things happened between all these characters, and I think the wildest thing for us was watching Launcher and seeing what they could do.
Uh huh.
Trying to describe what that character was is basically basically Gilgamesh from Fate, except with guns. I don't know if you've watched Fate.
Nuh-uh. Fate Grand Order.
Yeah, oh well, it's Fate Stay Night and Fate Zero, so it's the older ones. I'm pretty sure Gilgamesh does show up in Fate Grand Order. I haven't watched the series.
Isn't Melty Blood somehow tied into that?
So that my friends asked me the same thing. They asked me, it's like, hey, did this Fate character ever make it into Melty Blood? And it's just Saber. Saber was the only character that got a guest appearance in the game. There wasn't
Okay.
really anything else to it. Now, I think the lore behind it is that they are sort of in the same universe, or they've had some kind of crossover before, called Carnival Phantasm. But other than that, no real reason to have any other of the Fate characters.
Okay. Yeah, because I remember I forgot who I was talking to, and I think it was Johnny. He's like, yeah, something about Fate Grand or my buddy Trip. I don't know, but they brought it up, and I was like, okay. Okay, like me personally, when it comes to like fighting games, they're like, "Hey, Rick, you like the story of fighting games?" I'm like, "No, I'm all about just doing craziness and just having fun and just like I used to follow stories, but then like after Street Fighter Five came out, I'm just like, I don't care. Like, why is
Look,
Rashid
Rick, I
here?
get it. You're calling me a nerd, and my
No,
inner weeb is showing.
and
I
and I
understand. You can say it out loud.
I know, and I love the weakness. I love the inner nerd. I'm all about it, but. Yeah, so Launcher's Gilgamesh, and I'm like, okay.
Huh? Yeah, exactly. But yeah, Gilgamesh in Fate is a character that uh, basically summons swords from wherever he wants. And it's swords of all kinds, swords of legend that you might have heard of as well.
Yeah, I'm guessing like Final
And
Fantasy, like Masamune, Masapur,
yeah,
Excalibur.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, it's just like if he wants a blade, then he calls upon it, and it comes out. And that's exactly what Launcher is, except
I-
whenever she wants a gun, she calls
Or a
it.
laser beam, or a flamethrower, or a slow launching nuke. Yeah, I was like,
Yeah.
so this is Launcher. Okay.
Yeah, it's like, I see why they're called Launcher now.
Yeah.
Because everything is basically a rocket launcher.
Yeah. And I was trying out Berserker because I just figured, okay, the first character I see, he looks
All
cool.
shot, by the way, on stream.
Yeah.
Macaulay player.
Yeah. For real. So I was like, okay. You know what? Berserk, maybe Let's put him in the maybe pile. Let's try. My next one I want to try now is Ranger. I think he looks cool, and I kind of want to try him out. So he's the next one I want to see. I want to see him, Striker, and Hitman. Those are the ones I really want to play. And for some weird reason, Enchantress.
The puppet character.
The puppet. But
what? Do you have any experience with puppet characters at all?
None, dude. I remember when Strive first came out. I'm like, I'm gonna try Zato.
Oh boy.
Oh God, no! That's too big brain for me. I've never been a puppet character. I've always been about RTSD in your face, smothering them into a bad decision, and then just capitalize.
Yep. I feel that. That's why I play Giovanna. Shoutouts to 2D. Still a good button. Doesn't matter if it was nerfed.
They didn't get an update recently, no?
The recent patch was.
That was a while ago. No, DBFZ got a recent update, right?
Yes, DBFZ got is 1.31, and I actually think Guilty Gear might be getting a small bug fix soon. Sometimes you never know; those bug fixes might have a hidden buff or nerf.
Little stealth buffs, self nerfs.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
DBFZ did get a recent patch. I'm not too keen on what happened, but maybe they, I don't know, fixed Android 21 lab coat.
I know she was like OP, right?
Yeah, everybody's complaining about her.
Like,
and she got banned from some tournaments too.
Really?
I don't know if CEO banned her, but I do know. Yeah.
What about Combo Breaker?
She was good. Yeah, she was good enough. The Combo Breaker, no.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember when DBFZ first came out and the boys came over and we played it and I was like, man, this is really cool. But then like it kind of just fell away because we had so many fighting games playing in a rotation that just got away from me. And then like when I tried to get back into it, by then it was like season 2 and 3 and I'm like, oh man, like I think that's kind of for me it's kind of a deterrent when trying to get into a fighting game, especially if it's already like been out for a while and there's seasons already released and you're just trying to get into it. And like if you don't, I'm the kind of person who likes to play with friends, and if I don't have that, it becomes difficult to try to get into it because you know, when King of Fighters came out, you and me, I know I had a blast just playing with you because we were able to sit down, communicate, you know, see what's going on, you know, talk about it, and just have a good time. And I enjoyed it up until that time when we played, and then we just kept getting those random DCs in the lobby.
Bro.
And
that matchmaking.
Yeah.
Man.
And then like I don't know, it kind of just turned me off. And then they said, "Oh, we fixed it." I was like, "Cool." But by then I was like, "All right, I'm back on Street Fighter now." So
yeah, we were already off of it. We've already moved on.
Yeah.
They kind of like they lost our attention.
Yeah, and it sucked because I had so much fun with it. And then recently, Dirk came over 2 Fridays ago, and we're just bouncing around fighting games. And I was like, "Yeah, let's play some King of Fighters." And it's been so long that's like, oh no, okay, I cannot play this game. I have to start from the very beginning and then do all my trials and learn the game again. But it's like, no, King of Fighters is fun, but I'm gonna have to just wait until maybe after DNF Duel, you know, washes over me. But right now, I'm having fun with that game. What I liked about it, I know I'm going on a rant here, but DNF Duel just said, here's the base game, buy it, $49.99.
Oh yeah, we talked about this on stream.
Yeah,
on your stream
it was like it's just $49.99. No, here's buy the deluxe pass, buy the soundtrack. Here's extra costumes. Here's extra outfits. Here's extra colors. I'm like, this is just a game. I'm like, wow, dude. I think ever since, you know, with Street Fighter 5, you know, just launching, and ever since then, like every other fighting game, you know, launches with the base mode and a deluxe mode. Like it's nice to just see well, okay, I take that back. Multi Blood did that. They're like, here's just the game, enjoy it, have fun.
Although Melty Blood was more of an update to its previous iteration, right? Type Lumina was a new, like, has rollback netcode, updated characters type deal. So I think they already had they already had everything established. I want to say I'm not too keen into it because I didn't play Melty or knew about Melty up until Type Lumina was announced.
Yeah, I didn't know much about Melty until I was playing, I think, Johnny and Dirk, and like, you want to play Eunice? I'm like, what's Eunice? You know, and everybody says it's like American anime. I'm like, all right, I'm down, I'll play it. It's like, wow, I fell in love with Eunice. I was like, that's such a fun game. And then, you know, people kind of just faded away, and then it never had really a good online presence. I was like, I like this game, but there's no one to play with. Okay, goodbye.
Yeah, and I think Eunice is one of those community games that you you either play it online as part of a Discord or you have a community that keeps it going.
Yeah,
Very much like Melee, right?
yeah, yeah. Because I remember when Eunice came, when Eunice was getting really hot, they like and Eunice for Evo. I'm like, what? It got a spot in Evo in the on one
Mhm.
of the main games. I'm like, that's awesome. But it was just that 1 year, and then it never came back. It's like, oh, I mean, that's fine, but it's just I really did enjoy that game, and it's just unfortunate that it just didn't catch. And it's fine. Not all fighting games do.
And I think where it didn't catch would have to be a question that's asked regionally.
Mm.
I want to say that depending on where you are, that statement is either true or false.
Mm.
And it's a lot more true in some of the more populated areas because there's always more people playing it, or there's a very, very dedicated scene to it. Shout outs to Austin Air Assault. They have anime fighters every Thursday, and Eunice is Uniclear now,
Yeah.
but is like one of the hypest games that they play
Really?
on Thursdays.
That's awesome.
It's at Arcade UFO too, so
Oh,
it's
nice.
great.
Yeah, that's another thing. What I did like about Eunice over Melty Blood, mind you, I didn't play much Melty Blood, but Eunice just had these awesome looking characters like Waldstein and Merkava. I was like, man,
Hmm.
these characters just look so cool. I like these monster characters; they're awesome. And then I look at Melty Blood, I'm like, well, it's like a vampire kind of guy and a schoolgirl. Well, yeah, it's kind of cool, But it just, I know that doesn't matter much, but visually, I like Waldstein, and Waldstein's not the kind of character I usually play, but that's the one I stuck to on that game.
Yeah, and I think you're. I do want to say that that statement is kind of trivialized. Like saying the visuals don't matter much to us at this point. It's because we are ingrained and we know that, we appreciate gameplay and stuff like that. But from the outside looking in,
Oh yeah,
that matters a lot,
oh yeah, oh
and
yeah.
that's a majority of the sales for games like this too. So,
Y-
I think, yeah, I think that these games that are coming out, and I might be parroting a lot of like the current FGC content creators, right? But they have to have that presentation,
Yeah, they gotta have
or
the eye candy to look, to bring people in. I mean, I think that's not a real thing. A real what is it? A real good indicator of what Arc System does, because they always have games that look really great. Especially if you like anime, like it just. I mean, whether it's Fighters or the Guilty Gear Strive or DNF Duel, if you just look at their games, you're like, wow, Arc Systems does really really good visuals when it comes to their fighting games.
yeah, for sure. And a part of it is definitely because of the shading and the art style that they do, the 2.5D,
Yeah,
the cell shading that they have on their games
yeah, because
looks really cool, and they don't have to fiddle around with all of these 3D models or anything. They can just adjust the way the lighting is or where the light source would be, and it looks so much better.
yes, and that's another thing. Why I brought this up before, but with Capcom doing Resident Evil, doing Street Fighter 6 using their RE engine, I wonder how that's going to compare to the Unreal engine, like better or worse or something. Because at this point, yes, you got to have some visuals to bring in a crowd, but I'm more on the side of how much input does this bring into the system overall. Because um, you might have seen it, but there was like a graph that's on like on the FGC Twitter talking about like the input delay for DNF Duel.
DNF,
Yeah,
yeah,
we're on the PlayStation 5. If you play on 4K, it's like insanely high compared to
yep,
others. And the way I see it is like, if I'm gonna play a fighting game, I'm gonna play it on the best possible way I can, like for the inputs to get in there as fast as possible. When I see like PlayStation 5 on 4K, I'm like, why? Why would you? Like, I don't know. I just don't see the appeal on that part. And even when I booted up DNF Duel, I messaged Johnny. I was like, hey, Johnny, I'm thinking about just bringing down the graphics just down to recommended so I could get like the most crisp gameplay. And of course, this is just me speculating. I don't know if there's any discourse on what the graphics settings should be that are optimal for DNF. But I just tell myself I'm just gonna put it on recommended. That way, if it does have an in any sort of effect on it, it might be the least amount of it.
Yeah, yeah, and that's very big for very big, very important for the fighting game landscape, right? Especially because everything is in transition. We're trying to move on to the next generation, and it's very difficult because of these frame delay issues. Yeah, like I like that graphic you mentioned. PS5 at the highest setting was like 7 frames of delay,
Yeah.
which is absurd. Which it was even worse than base PS4.
Yeah, and I was talking to my buddy GDB, and he said it felt like he had like some just input delay playing on the base PS4. So I'm like, oh wow, that's ugh.
I mean, base PS4 wasn't exactly optimized, and I think
I
it
don't think so.
is probably the second worst console version to get for a game. Mm-hmm. Because the standard right now is the PS4 Pro,
Yeah.
right? And I've also like thought about getting a PS4 Pro for my own because I only own a base PS4, PS5, and my PC, right?
Mm-hmm.
And having that PS4 Pro would make it a lot easier to have people over and not have any complaints about it. Or if I do want to play on the PS4 instead of my PC for whatever reason, because I'm traveling or something, then it would be, I guess, the closest to a tournament experience. Very similar to how we always want the closest to the arcade experience, right?
Yeah, I'm in the same boat also. Where like when I do my gaming, I play on a Benzawi, 24-inch monitor, TN plane, and my friends are like, why don't you just upgrade it? I'm like, no, dude, this is the closest thing I could get to the tournament scene. Like, oh yeah, what tournament are you going to, Slick? I'm like, hey man,
Oh,
it makes me feel
called
good.
out.
You know what I'm talking
Called
about?
out.
But like, 100%, I got called out. But it's just like, hey, this is like the best version of the game I could get it at.
Yeah.
So that's how I prefer to play. And it's funny because they're like, you have a monitor that says TN 1080p. That's all you're doing? I'm like, yeah. You could upgrade your monitors and do 4K gaming. I'm like, I can, but that doesn't appeal to me. As long as the game runs at a slick, 60 frames or 120 frames at 1080p, then I'm happy as can be.
Yeah, fair enough. And especially for fighting games,
So, yeah, especially
that
fighting
is
games.
all. Yeah, that is also something that is in contention right now, thanks to good old TS Saban Arturo.
Yeah, I never thought much of it until he started bringing it up, and I was like, "Holy crap! There is a freaking science to this." And I mean, of course, I think he's preaching about what 240 hertz.
24480.
Yeah,
I think he goes around with a 480 with a rig that can run 480 and trying to get people to understand and see how it feels, how it plays, and how you look at it.
and I was like, man, that's pretty nice. But I was like, I don't think I have enough dough to just justify buying a monitor that does that. So I was like, I'm just gonna keep what I have now, which is fine. But yeah, I mean, it didn't click to me either. I was like, what does it mean? But I saw his video and he just started breaking down the numbers. I'm like, okay, that's starting to make sense. That's starting to make sense.
Yeah, and it helps with your reactions, and even though we may not see it now, the more we would look at a higher quality monitor or a higher refresh rate monitor, the bigger the difference ends up being when we go back. It's one of those scenarios where we don't really make much of it. We think it looks cool when we upgrade, and then when we go back, we're like, "Oh my god, I've been living under a rock."
Yeah, like you've been
Right?
underwater and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I remember when.
That's just
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, so that's just one of the things that you would have to see it to believe it, literally.
Yeah, for real. Yeah, I remember when Street Fighter V was first getting announced, and they said it has an initial lag input of 7 frames. Everybody's like, "What?" Then they kind of
Oh yeah,
fixed it. And they dropped it to 4, and then people realized it kind of cycles. Sometimes it goes up to 7, then it goes down to 4. I'm like, "What?"
variable lag.
Yeah,
That is that. Oh,
and I was just
I
like,
remember getting that, and it actually just gave me a headache sometimes.
and Street Fighter is one of my one of my beloved franchises as a video game franchise. It's one of my favorite all time. And then when I hear like this is going on, and like I was kind of like a Street Fighter 5 defender, like no, it's okay, the game's fine, it's okay. But then like little by little, the way Capcom just kept handling it, you know, and then like, okay, it launched bare bones. I'm like, no, it's fine. It's down for the tournament scene just for versus players. Okay, cool, whatever.
Stockholm syndrome.
Yeah,
Oh
yeah, dude.
man.
I was so freaking kidnapped by Capcom, and then it wasn't until like after like the third season, and I'm just like, and I followed it by another Capcom Pro Tour bundle. I'm just like, all right, Rick, the writing's on the wall. It's just stepping
Yeah.
back. Yeah, yeah. That's like my dark days in Street Fighter. Like I didn't care about streaming. I barely watched anything. Never played the game. And then it wasn't until like I got my PC and they had the definitive edition, championship edition came out, and I was like, you know what? I'll give it one last shot. And it stuck. But still, I was just like, damn, Capcom, good job, dude. Good job.
Yeah, they made it better. They worked on it. They always worked on it.
And yes, and I'll
They
give
get
them that.
better at least. Mm.
Street Fighter Five is in a lot better spot now than it was at launch. 100%.
Yeah, it's a. I can very confidently tell my friends that it is a good game.
Mm-hmm.
If you had asked me that in 2016, I would say just go back, go back to another game,
Just play Street Fighter 4
right?
Third Strike or something.
Yeah, or even like learn how to play Guilty Gear.
Or learn how
Lo
to
and
play
behold,
Guilty
we
Gear.
didn't know that there's gonna be another Guilty Gear coming out, but you know,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. And
but
it's
yeah,
just,
Street Fighter Five, what a ride.
yeah. So when it comes to Street Fighter 6, like again, them using the RE engine, I'm curious. And again with the new guys at the helm with Yoshinori Ono out, I'm kind of hoping that these guys are better suited to have a better launch in this game. So I'm cautious, but I'm hopeful at the same time with the next mainline series.
Yeah, and the devs, those yeah, the two devs, Matsumoto and Takayama,
Mm-hmm.
listen. I don't know if listen is the right word. They pay attention
Okay.
to the community, and it'll definitely be very interesting to see how they are able to present this game to an audience that is expecting something good. Have
You,
you also ever noticed that the even number Street Fighters always set the standard for
really?
a new generation going forward? So for example, yeah, Street Fighter 2
Of course, yeah.
literally invented a combo system.
Yeah.
Street Fighter 4, the 09ers, brought fighting games to
Oh yeah.
a newer generation.
A renaissance
And,
of fighting games, yeah.
yeah, and now Street Fighter 6 with the RE engine, it's going to be the first fighting game that will be almost exclusive. I don't remember if they said it'll be on the PS4, but it is coming out after you know everything's in turmoil. They had a very poor Street Fighter 5 launch, and it set a bad tone going
Oh
forward.
yeah.
Not only that, we everybody recognizes the importance of having an online experience now,
Yeah.
especially after the last few
Oh,
years.
100%.
And it makes me wonder how the devs will account for that and have this game be accessible for all audiences, offline and online.
Yeah, and you're right. In this day and age, it coming out in the middle of the current gen life cycle, it has to be really good. It has to be awesome. Not only does it have to have like online, a robust online net code, but if it could have crossplay also, I think that's also important for fighting games now because yes, you gotta have a good netcode for sure. But if you divide your player base between Steam, console, whether it's PlayStation or whatever, that's just you're hurting your numbers,
Yeah,
in my opinion.
yeah. Especially with the console exclusivity that Street Fighter Five had,
Hmm.
not being able to include Xbox players in this,
Yeah.
I think definitely cut away from their crowd because you were asking them to buy an entirely new system that had come out a few years ago. It's still probably around $300 to $400, so the cost of entry was very high.
Do you think that's because I don't have any like evidence about this, but wasn't like Sony kind of backing them up financially
Yeah,
to help them out, and that's why it was kind of like exclusive for only their console and Steam, but only their
yeah.
console.
So Sony was uh, Sony was they were the big boys. They had money to throw around, and they were buying um, exclusivity contracts essentially. Like
Okay, that's what I
that's what happened
figured.
with Street Fighter Five. That's what happened with Final Fantasy VII Remake. They said that we will help promote your game only if you have it on our console.
And
And it was, I think, the advent of what we call the console wars. PS3 versus 360. What's better? Oh, this, and that,
well, the
just to
console,
drive sales.
yeah, but the console war concept that's been around since like Sega Nintendo days, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
now it's
yeah.
just on a different level. Now it's just now they fight it instead of bragging about how many users they have. They brag about what exclusive IPs they have. I think.
Yeah, and I think that barrier is being taken down now, and the real that now I guess the most recent wars, quote unquote, is console versus PC, right?
Yeah, 100%.
PC Master Race, all that.
Yeah, it wasn't until I finally bit the bullet and my friend Ruben's like, Rick, just get a fucking PC. Because I was like, man, I don't want to, I don't want a massive footprint in my room and whatever. And he's like, dude, look, you can make this as big or as small as you want. Start off small, just the tower, keyboard, monitor, and then if you want add more, you add more. And sure enough, now I got a whole freaking podcast studio. But the fact that I can just get almost any game I want and it's optimized, and I could just have just as much fun whether it was on console, just like I'm having fun, playing it on the PC. Like, why not? Why be limited to just that little box where I have access to so many other options and features?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It gives you to use PlayStation's catchphrase over the last few years. PC is the definition of play has no limits.
Yeah, for real.
You get to do whatever you want. The only thing stopping you is a contract that says, "Hey, God of War is only on PS4," or
Yeah,
something like
and
that.
don't get me wrong. There's a couple like PlayStation exclusives that are cool, but there's none that I'm like dying to like play. It's just like
Hmm.
God of War Ragnarok. Okay, cool. Like I'll eventually get around to it, but there's nothing I gotta play day one. Now, if unless it's something like another From Software exclusive like Bloodborne 2, then I'm like, okay, well, you
Bloodborne
know,
60 FPS, please.
or
All
that
we want
Jesus
is
Christ.
just an upgrade to 60 FPS.
Yeah, I want to go on a quick spiel, but yeah,
Yeah.
okay, Last of Us 2 getting a remastered. I'm like, or the
Ooh,
Last of Us getting remastered.
man.
Like, okay, cool, fine. Why can't you just give Blue Point access to Bloodborne and just let them upgrade it for the current for the PlayStation 5 and make it run at 60 frames per second? No, 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 we can't do that. But
I
Last
mean,
of Us,
there are currently rumors stating that Blue Point has been put in charge of a well-known, very beloved IP. We don't know what it is. Don't know if it's a FromSoft game. We do know that they've done FromSoft games before with Demon Souls,
yeah,
but they also did Shadow of the
yes,
Colossus.
yeah, I remember that
Yeah.
one.
So we'll just have to wait on that. Um, you know,
Yeah, but as for like
huffing that copium, right?
yeah, but when it comes to like PlayStation exclusives, I'm like, well, but, like from their first party studios, like there's not much that I like. But yeah, sometimes, when they have these time exclusives, like when it comes to Street Fighter, like, well, yeah. But if I could get on PC now, for sure, I'll try to get everything on PC.
Yeah, and then that's another great aspect about PCs is that it's much more customizable than a console would be. I know nowadays you can probably hot swap a lot of pieces in a console too, but stuff like memory, stuff like graphics cards, making things run better, look better. That's another one of the perks of PCs. Instead of buying a console every what 5 or 6 years,
Give or take.
you can upgrade to one or two parts that probably cost the same, and you're almost set for like a decade on
Yeah,
a PC
yeah.
if you do it right, maintain it, all that stuff.
I want to go back to netcode and this lack thereof. When Grand Blue Fantasy Versus came out, that just came out at
Hot
the
topic. Yeah.
wrong space. Because I played that game and I was like, wow, this is pretty cool. I like this concept of using shortcuts. Yeah,
Hmm.
or you could do the technical input and it won't be on cooldown. And I'm glad they did that because I was like, wow, there's fighting games that you can actually implement it and it's still fine. It's still fun to play.
Hmm.
But then, the pandemic happened and then just really couldn't play online as well. You mean I'm sure
A
you can play, but
a Discord game as they call it now, you know, which
yeah,
is which has a negative connotation to it because you know you can only find games if you organize them instead of just going online, hopping on, hitting the ranked button, and then just finding a match within less than a minute, right?
yeah. So I'm guessing that must be one of the cool things about your area. You could just go to the locals, because what you go to a Guilty Gear monthly, roughly,
Hmm.
right?
It's actually it's a bi they have a
Bi-monthly.
bi-weekly and potentially a monthly.
Okay.
The way that the locals work here is each of the major games has a bi-weekly, whether it's on every other Saturday, every other Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's Mondays where it is a casual meetup. Everybody can bring whatever game they want to the setup
Mm-hmm.
and just play, teach other people how to play their game, or just catch some practice, some sparring, right?
That's awesome.
And and the final thing is the local organizers have a series called Austin Night Fights,
Mm-hmm.
and they showcase multiple games every month, around I think 5 or 6 at least, and they rotate the games so that everybody in the community has a chance to come out to these monthlies that are streamed. The most recent one, we even had a food truck come through and feed us as well for anybody that was entering a tournament. It was great.
See, that's
Yeah.
awesome. That's very awesome, dude. Because I hear they have events here in Houston, but sometimes it's like it's across town. I'm like, oh, and it's like on a Wednesday. I was like, I'm an old man. I gotta be in bed by 11:30 midnight. It's difficult for me to find time to go all the way over there across town to come back. I mean, of course, like it comes down to Rick, how bad do you want it? Of course, I understand, but it's like, man, it just becomes difficult.
Yeah. Shout out to the TOs. Being a tournament organizer is a thankless job. You know,
Yeah, yeah.
so much that they have to
Yeah,
deal with.
and I just thought about it one day. I was like, Rick, what's if one day you just wanted to have a couple of friends over and just do like a little 8-man tournament? No, not tournament, but like a round robin tournament. I'm like,
Hmm.
all right, you have to like know how to do things and set them up, and then if you want to put it on stream, I'm like, you know what? I'm not gonna do that.
Yeah, the real factor there is asking yourself how much do you want it?
Yeah,
How much are you willing to go through in order to set something up like that?
yeah, because
And if you can get help, yeah.
that was always like like just like just one of those little dreams of mine. It's like, man, if I could get streaming setting up, and then like if a local event happens, I could just take my equipment over there and set them up and do commentary. But like, hold on, Rick, hold on. You really think you have all the you know time and setup and skill to do that? I mean, of course you got to start off somewhere. You got to learn, but it's like,
Yeah.
oh man, it's just that's a task. So I mean, it's just I'm not saying that I'll never do it, but it's just like it's you better be dedicated and make sure you want to
Hmm.
do it.
Yeah, I always play around with the idea of streaming myself, and it's just a busy life, and sometimes I'm just tired and I don't want to do anything after work, right? Especially for you because you're more on like a physical side of work, and for me, sitting at an office dealing with people can also be
I
tiring.
bet.
And I just come home, we just come home, and it's like, well, don't feel like doing anything today, so I'm just gonna put on a Twitch stream, change to my PJs,
And
and
relax.
lay there like a potato.
Yeah. Um. With Street Fighter 6, going back to that, and then how Street Fighter 5 was
Mhm.
so poorly received. You think that's why MBCI was kind of got some hate right at the gate, or you really think that game was bad? What's your opinion on MBCI?
MVCI got a bad rep at the start because of the visual issues and the roster issues since it was pushed.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, you can definitely get the feeling that Disney pushed it because they wanted this fighting game to be part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Yeah.
Uh, feel free to edit that part out
No, no, no.
if in case it gets striked or
It's not getting
something.
it's
I
not
don't know
right.
because we're
No, but
talking bad about Disney or
but you're
something.
right. You're right.
Yeah.
There were some parts that visually wasn't looking too good. Like you saw Chun Li's face, Dante's face, Captain America's
Hmm.
shoulders. They're just like
Yeah.
I'm not saying it has to be pixel perfect, but it's like, can you guys just try a little bit? Just
Yeah.
You know,
And,
if you want to highlight some, you know, if you're gonna like demo the stuff, don't you want to put your best foot forward instead of the?
yeah, and this goes back to what we were talking about with Melty Blood, right? It's we kind of mentioned that the visuals weren't really too striking, and that does have an impact on it. The thing with MVCI, anytime I talk to somebody that plays the game, some of them say that it's the gameplay is like some of the best versus gameplay that they've ever had,
Uh
they've
huh.
ever played, never been a part of, because of the way that the tag system works, and they always swear by it. You know, I never played the game. I just watched it from the sidelines,
Uh huh.
but Allah, I think that the game was unfair. What was given the unfair treatment, and
Yeah.
it's unfortunate, which means we'll have to wait until I don't know 2025 to see another Marvel vs. Capcom game, most likely.
It was funny. I actually went into NYC Furby's stream one day, and he was like TOing, or he was just streaming, hosting a tournament for Marvel for MBCI, and as in chat, I just put in like, why didn't this game catch? He's like, well, this game just
Mm,
got shed on the very beginning, and that's it. I'm like, oh, that makes sense. Because I look, I didn't play much of the Marvel series before. I mean, I played a little bit of Marvel vs. Capcom 1 with my high school buddies, you know, just goofing off. That was before I was serious about fighting games.
mhm.
But MBCI was like the first one I really got into, and I enjoyed it. I played as Winter Soldier and Nemesis using the Power Stone, and I had fun playing with that game.
Oh God.
And it was so cool. But then after a while, like people were talking about, there's no this, no that, and then it kind of had this just a series of misfortunate events leading up to it, with you know, with F Champ doing these fake reactions, and then Combo Fiend saying, oh, that has, you know, they're just functions or just features and stuff like that. So I was just like, oh, yeah, I didn't have the best. I mean, apparently some people say it has good online netcode, so that's a positive, but I never
It
tried out
had
myself.
working rollback.
That's what I
So
had.
yep. If it gave Capcom anything, it was the idea that yes, they can use functional rollback instead of one-sided like Street Fighter Five.
Yeah, but I liked it and I had fun. But of course, if my circle and my FGC consists of the people I play with, that's my little community. And if
Mm.
nobody's playing it, it's like, well, let's play what everybody else is playing. And you know, I try to champion it. Like, hey, let's play some Marvel. Like, nah, let's play BB Tag. Like, okay, I'll play BB Tag. And you know, BB Tag's fun too. But yeah, I just remember MVCI. I enjoyed it, but no, it didn't catch on. It was unfortunate, and I could see why. You know, it just wasn't, I guess, standing up to its former, you know, mainline series games as like three. Because three, I mean, that's still popular. People still play that one. Still
Oh, people
people.
mod that. The mods are
Oh, dude, I've been
the
seeing the
modding
mods.
community is insane
I've
for
been
that
seeing
game.
those mods lately. I'm like, oh my god, these people love this game, and that's awesome. I love seeing stuff like that.
Yep. Speaking of loving games, though, I was going to pull this back to from the tangent that we went off
Which
of
one?
because there is we were talking about the three games
Oh yeah,
that
yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
first bought, right? And the last one was Final Fantasy VII. However,
Mm,
I think coming back to this, we can probably come to a stopping point for tonight. It's
okay.
been about an hour and a half, and I have a few friends that are pinging me for some Guilty Gear Strive sets.
Okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Uh,
We'll wrap it up.
if you don't mind, we can wrap this up for a little bit. But then if you'll have me again, I would be more than welcome to come in, talk about Final Fantasy VII for hours on end.
That'll work. Anyways, yeah, I want to say thank you for hanging out. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having
You
me.
got
This
any?
is very fun. Content creation is something that I wholly support, whether it's for fun, whether you're trying to do it for a living, or, just hanging out with the homies, right?
For sure. I mean, yeah. I mean, we've always been kind of like friends. We knew each other through Johnny, but just being able to sit down like this, one on one, and just chit chat and get to know each other more, that's just more fun. I appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Thanks for having me, bud.
All right, brother. See you later. Thank you. Bye.
All right. See ya.